Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are doing something a little different. We're tackling Module 5, which is all about interpersonal violence. Now, I think when most people hear that, their mind immediately goes to, the boogeyman, the serial predator, the stuff you see on Netflix that keeps you up at night. But if you actually look at the data, that's just a tiny, tiny fraction of what violence really is.
It really is. And that's the first trap we have to avoid. We all have this stranger danger bias, but statistically, you're much safer walking past a stranger on the street than you are in, say, a heated argument with someone you know. Today isn't about telling scary stories. It's about looking at the machinery of violence.
Yeah.
Through sociological lens.
The machinery, I like that. It makes it sound less like a random explosion, more like something with gears and levers.
That's the core premise of Chapter 5. Deviance, even the most violent kind, is structured behavior. It connects to social roles, to class, all these fundamental features of social life. It's not just bad apples. It's about patterns. And our goal today is to really take those patterns apart, look at offenders, victims, the whole system, to see how that machine actually works.
Okay, so to do that, we have to start with a big distinction from the text. The difference between episodic violence and these patterned violent careers, because, punching someone in a bar fight is just fundamentally different from hunting people.
Hugely different. And the text puts this on a continuum, non-career versus career criminals. And, most violence, it falls into that non-career bucket. These are what sociologists call primary deviants.
Primary deviants. So these are people who, they don't see themselves as criminals?
Right. Think about someone who speeds when they're late. They don't identify as a lawbreaker. They see it as a situational thing. The same logic applies to most violence. It's a reaction. A dispute escalates. Maybe there's alcohol and someone throws a punch. Or worse. They do the act, but they don't wake up the next day and think, I am a violent person. They think, I made a huge mistake.
So there's no life organization built around it. They're not, taking courses on how to be a better criminal.
No. But then you get to the other end of the spectrum, the career offender, the secondary deviant. And this is where the machinery is totally different. The chapter gives us 3 criteria. First, they have an identification with crime. They see a criminal in the mirror. Second, a commitment to it as a social role. And third, this is the chilling part, they show progression in their techniques.
They get better at it. It's like a dark form of professional development.
In a way, yes. Now, usually when we say career criminal, we mean like a professional thief. But there's one major exception where violence fits this career model perfectly: serial homicide.
Right, because unlike the guy in the bar fight, the serial offender is practicing.
They're refining a craft. The source material on The Mask of Sanity points out this exact progression. They might outgrow early fantasies. They might start with what the text calls surrogate acts.
That's the McDonald triad stuff, right? Like animal cruelty, fire setting.
Yes, but let's look at why. It's not just being mean. It's about practicing power. A child who feels powerless might torture an animal because it's the only thing they can completely dominate. It gives them this godlike control. But over time, that's not enough. They graduate. And with each crime, they learn. They learn how to lure a victim, how to hide evidence, how to avoid getting caught.
That's a chilling thought. That they're learning on the job like anyone else building a career. It really shifts it from madness to method.
And that distinction is vital. The career label isn't about money. It's about the deep psychological and social commitment to that deviant role.
So that's the big question then. How does that happen? You don't just wake up one day and decide, I think I'll adopt a violent identity. It has to be a process.
It is a process, and a really grueling one. The chapter outlines a framework by a researcher, Athens, called the Development of Dangerous Violent Offenders. It's broken down into 4 stages, almost like a curriculum for violence.
Okay. Walk us through this curriculum. Where does it start?
Stage 1 is brutalization. This happens in the formative years. The subject is physically coerced, forced to submit to authority.
So abuse.
Yes, but it's a specific kind of lesson. They're being taught, through pain, that overwhelming force is the ultimate authority in the world. They see it happen to others, too. They learn that there are hammers and there are nails, and right now, they're the nail.
That is a bleak worldview. So how do they go from being the victim to the aggressor?
That's stage 2, belligerency. It's a cognitive shift, a conscious decision. The subject concludes, I must use violence in the future. They decide, I will never be the nail again. From now on, I'm the hammer.
It's a survival strategy. They're just internalizing the lesson they were taught.
Precisely. But there's a difference between deciding to be violent and actually doing it. That leads to stage 3, violent performances. This is the test drive. They go out and intentionally injure someone to see if this new approach actually works.
And if it does, if they win the fight, scare off the bully. What happens then?
Then they hit the final stage, virulency. This is the point of no return. The offender accepts the violent label that other people give them. People start to fear them. And instead of rejecting that fear, they embrace it. It gives them a sense of power they've never had.
It's interesting how social that is. You'd think of these people as loners, but you're saying the community's reaction, their fear, is what helps lock in that identity.
It's the essence of labeling theory. If the only respect you've ever gotten comes from people being terrified of you, you're going to protect that reputation.
Okay, that covers the individual path. But the chapter also talks about violence. That isn't just about trauma, but about group norms. The idea that in some places, violence is actually the correct thing to do.
Right, this moves us from individual pathology to the subculture of violence.
And there's that incredible story in the chapter about the gang member Pharaoh. It really stuck with me.
The car ride scenario.
Yeah. So Pharaoh's driving with a researcher. He pulls up to a stoplight and locks eyes with a guy in another car. In Pharaoh's world, that look is a challenge.
He looked at me crazy. That's the key phrase.
Exactly. So Pharaoh stares him down. The other guy looks away, shows submission. And Pharaoh's like, okay, we're good. But then he explains that if the guy hadn't looked away...
He says he would have had to kill him. Not, I wanted to, but I would have had to.
For a look. To an outsider, that sounds completely insane. Like zero impulse control.
But sociologically, it's about differential power. In that subculture, your status, your safety, it's all built on respect. If Pharaoh lets a stranger disrespect him at a stoplight, he loses power. Violence becomes a tool, a rational calculation within the rules of his world.
It's about restoring that balance of power. And the text says this can apply in domestic situations, too.
It's a critical connection. Violence is often an attempt to restore power in a relationship where someone feels they're losing control. They feel they're losing benign control, the normal give and take, so they resort to violence to reestablish dominance.
I just want to pause here for a second. We're explaining the logic, but we need to be clear.
Absolutely. Understanding the trigger for violence never, ever shifts the blame to the victim. Explanation is not justification. We're just trying to understand the machinery.
Right. Okay, so we have the subculture, we have the brutalized child.
Right.
But that still doesn't quite explain the predator who has no gang, no obvious abuse, who just seems to treat people like objects, the cold violence.
For that, we have to layer in the psychological dimension, the dark triad.
It sounds like a supervillain team, but it's a real psychological framework. What are the 3 pillars?
First, narcissism. And not just taking selfies. We mean a grandiose sense of self, a profound entitlement, a feeling that the rules just don't apply to them.
I'm the main character, everyone else is an extra.
Pretty much. Then you add the second pillar, Machiavellianism. This is the strategic, manipulative, long-term planner. This separates the impulsive bar fighter from the serial offender who plots.
And the third?
Psychopathy. This is the fuel. It's high impulsivity, sure, but specifically a lack of remorse and what we call shallow affect.
This is the part I just can't wrap my head around. How do you hurt someone and feel?
Yeah.
Nothing. How does a brain even do that?
The sources describe a mechanism called moral disengagement, specifically dehumanization. It's like flipping a cognitive switch. Most of us have an inhibitory response to hurting someone. We see pain, we feel distress. To get around that, these offenders reclassify the victim in their own minds.
They just edit reality.
They see the victim not as a person, but as meat, or an object, or a target. If you don't see the other person as human, then the rules of morality just don't apply to them.
But, and I know this is a crucial nuance, just having these traits doesn't automatically make someone a killer, right?
No, absolutely not. And that is a vital clarification. Personality traits increase risk. They are not destiny. Most people with these traits are not violent criminals. They might be ruthless CEOs or just difficult neighbors. Violence requires a convergence of traits, environment, and ultimately choice.
Speaking of that neighbor, we have to talk about the mask of sanity. Because the scariest thing is that these career offenders don't look like monsters.
That's Hervey Cleckley's famous concept. The mask of sanity is how the psychopath mimics normalcy. A professional thief might brag to other thieves, but the psychopath knows they have to hide their true nature to survive.
They're acting.
Constantly. The source talks about benign control versus malign control. Most of us use benign control, respect, negotiation. They often lack the emotional hardware for that, so to feel effective, they use malign control, domination. But they can't do that out in the open.
So they have the job, the family, they're on the PTA.
That's compartmentalization. They maintain this facade of normalcy. It's their primary survival tool. In a small village 200 years ago, everyone would know if you were cruel. In a modern city, you can be a predator by night and a polite neighbor by day.
And that mask is why they're so hard to catch. It's an institutional failure. We're looking for the raving lunatic, and the real threat is helping you with your groceries.
We're looking for a caricature, and they're presenting a mirror.
Let's shift to how society responds. We've talked about the sociology, the psychology, but eventually the law gets involved.
Well, looking at the legal foundations, you have actus reus, the criminal act itself, the physical part. But more important for this discussion is mens rea,
The guilty mind.
the intent. And this links right back to our career versus non-career distinction. The law treats the non-career offender who kills in a burst of passion differently than the career offender who plots a murder for weeks.
And the plotter gets punished more severely.
Usually, yes. The law also distinguishes between mala in se and mala prohibita.
Okay, I always get these mixed up. Help me out.
Mala in se means crimes that are just wrong in themselves. Murder, rape. Across almost every culture, these are seen as fundamentally evil.
Whereas mala prohibita is
Wrong because we say it's wrong, like a parking ticket. But interpersonal violence is almost always mala in se, and because it threatens the entire social fabric, our reaction is the most severe form of social control we have. Long prison sentences, execution.
we're trying to cut the cancer out of the social body.
Exactly.
Before we close, we have to talk about us, the audience. Why are we so obsessed with this stuff? We said at the start we aren't telling scary stories, but the culture loves them.
The media aspect is massive. The sources use the term celebrification. The media converts real human suffering into cultural attention.
We turn killers into celebrities.
In a way, the Night Stalker, BTK, they achieve a mythic status. They become household names. And here's the dark feedback loop. The offenders know this.
They watch the news, too.
They do, and they learn. They see that if they create a signature, they get more airtime, they get more fame. So by obsessing over them, we are potentially feeding the narcissism of the next one.
That is a rough pill to swallow, that our own curiosity might be part of the machine.
It's a sobering thought. And as sociologists, we have to do a reality check. The media distorts our perception. It makes this predatory career violence seem common. But remember what Chapter 5 says.
That most violence is situational, it's emotional. It's human frailty, not some demonic evil.
Correct. The vast majority of it is non-predatory. It's tragic, absolutely, but it's not the work of some criminal mastermind. We have to keep that proportionality.
This has been a heavy one, but a necessary one. If you're going to understand society, you have to look at the cracks.
And remember that those cracks aren't random. They're structured. If you take one thing away, it's that distinction. Most violence is a breakdown of a situation. Predatory violence is the construction of an identity.
And that identity is built through stages. It's fueled by psychology, and sometimes, unfortunately, reinforced by the culture around it.
It's a complex machine.
Next time, we're pivoting to something that might hit a little closer to home for a lot of you. We'll be diving into nonviolent and property crime.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening.
Audio generated by NotebookLM, reviewed, edited, and published by Professor Dixon.